Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we have our final Whateverthon update. So if you don't know, which I don't really know how you don't know if you've been watching all of these all month, Whateverthon is a readathon that happens in June, hosted by Maddie from Book Browsing Blog, which is about reading whatever the heck you want. I am a co-captain for Team Beach Readers. I have some lovely other co-captains, Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction, Steph from Steph Loves, and India from What India Reads. And we've had a great little reading month. With Whateverthon, you literally get points for just reading books, but there is a bingo for each team that you can attempt for. So here is my bingo update. I did not read that much in the last 10 days, which is kind of sad because we have a whole blank board. Let's see what I can get done with this. My first read of the final 10 days of June was The House Across the Lake, which I think should be more accurately named The House Across the Pond by Riley Sager. This is Riley Sager's newest novel. He is a thriller writer and he tried to do something different with this novel and it just really didn't work for me. I tend to really gravitate and love his past works. The way he writes them is very hit and miss, but like the ones that work, and I like the writing style enough typically of his writing that I always still want to continue and pick up the ones even if I don't like them. This one was a no-go from me. I gave it 1 star. 1 star, which feels really harsh, but there are so many negatives about this book for me. I did not have a fun time reading it. It is my least favorite Riley Sager. Yes, you're hearing me say it now. Final Girls has finally been bumped from worst Riley Sager. And if you know I hate Final Girls. There's so many, I don't really get what he was trying to do here. I was bored this entire book. There was not a lot of scenes that I cared about or enjoyed. We have I should backtrack to what this is about. So, The House Across the Lake Pond is about an actress who has kind of hit her deepest spot, the bottom of the totem pole. Like, she can't go any lower, her lowest low, and she goes to her family cabin on this lake and she starts to spy on the newest neighbors, which live in a glass house. She has these fancy binoculars and she creeps on them. They are a model and billionaire company tech guy, and one day she sees her model neighbor go into the lake and start to drown. So she gets out in the boat and she saves her and they start to become friends. She starts to notice some things are off, and then when the neighbor goes missing, she starts to blame the husband and things start to go from there. That's all in the back of the book. I'm not spoiling anything. If the book did just that would have been great. It does not just do that. First off, our protagonist is a drunk. Which is something I hate. I feel like it's lazy writing. It's done really poorly where she's an unreliable narrator because she's drunk. So you can't take anything she says seriously because she's drunk. It's just a laziness on a writer's part for me, to give us a false sense of security with a lot of things. That, just in general, is a thing I hate when authors do, but I want to say not only was it just laziness, it was also such bad representation. I don't even often talk about representation on my channel, I know that, but the way Sager portrayed drunks was just very on and off. It made it sound like something that you could just switch, like a light switch, on and off. That's not what alcoholism is. That is, alcoholism just can't be cured, which you also get in this book. Just by the day you wake up, you're just I'm not gonna drink anymore. I hated the rep in that. And yeah, something else is Riley Sager you always hear the criticism that he can't write girls. I 100% agree with this, but it's never been something that has impacted my enjoyment, so I've never really criticized him on that or cared enough about that, although I can understand and I can see it. Just has never impacted my enjoyment. In this book, it really impacted my enjoyment. The other thing is that this lady drunk is Superwoman. It was so unbelievable. She'd be 15 drinks in and then be ready to fight off a cougar. I mean, that didn't happen in the book, but you get what I'm trying to say. It was just so unbelievable that you're so drunk and you're thinking so clearly, making such conscious decisions, coming up, following a plan all the way through, things that people don't do when they're intoxicated. And she does fight someone off at some point. And then there's so much more that I didn't like. There's too many red herrings in this book for me. I love a book with a lot of red herrings, but I also still want to be able to put pieces together and I want things to all make sense. There is literally characters and plot lines that are put in this book just to steer you in a different direction, but don't make sense in any other context of the book. And I hate that. Don't need plot lines that don't connect anywhere else. If you're gonna put red herrings in the book, put good red herrings. Like, make it work. It was just so lazy to just throw in all of these random red herrings to, like, steer you off from the path. Although, he didn't even need to do that because the plot twist, I did not see coming. But not in a good way. Like, it was not in a good way. It was like, how the frick did this come out of left door? Like, left field, this came right in like a wrecking ball and ruined the entire book. Like, if I already didn't like the book when the plot twist happened, and without spoiling anything, I think this plot twist could have worked in some of his other books because he writes a better atmosphere, such as Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark. So I'm very confused as the plot twist in this book, I didn't have that atmosphere that made it make sense to me, and then there's a plot twist after, and there's just so much going on in this book. Another case of less is more. Just bad writing. I will continue to read Sager, but I definitely did not like this one. Also, need to tell you why I think it should be called House Across the Pond is this lady runs across this pond in, like, around the lake in, like, 10 minutes. Her boat, sometimes, like, the motorboats will take, like, 15 minutes, and sometimes she'll be in a little, like, canoe, and it'll take, like, 5 minutes to get across. Like, people are across so quickly. I know, having a lake lot myself, unless I had, like, billion-dollar binoculars, I don't think I could see as clearly as she sees into someone else's house. Like, she literally can see what they're cooking for dinner. And it's a lake. Like, it's not that small. It should have been a house across the pond. It must have been a very small lake. And yeah, it was just one of those books that just more bad things kept piling on, which just kept taking away from my enjoyment, and just really did not enjoy. So, with that, let's at least get some points from this 1-star read. I have my 3 book covers. I didn't read a lot this month, so I feel like I need to be strategic with my placements. So, I'm thinking, okay, I think I have to go for a summer thriller. It came out in June, about a pond. Okay. I did buy it with an Audible credit, so I feel like that counts as recently hauled. I should take all these off, but technically I've done some of them. And then for the last one, I don't think this matters. I'm gonna put it as... Ooh, I lied. Okay, I lied. I'm changing things up. We're putting it as less read genre instead of recently hauled. And then water on the cover. Nope, I lied. Oh, fuck. I thought that was 2022 release. We're going back. Recently hauled and less read genre. Sorry, that was confusing. Okay, and then the next book and the last book I read this week, these last 10 days, I had a very slow reading week, partially because of this book, was The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. This is a standalone, but kind of, because it's actually a prequel standalone that then leads into the author's middle grade series, which is temporarily on hold, and I don't think, like, that's been a while, so I don't know if she's ever going back to it. I gave this a 3.5. I typically don't use 0.5s, but I do think it deserved the 0.5. I was planning on making a discussion video on this, but I started watching reviews, and it's an interesting book because everyone that gave it 5 stars and has reviewed it, I 100% agree with everything they've said, but I could not connect to this story. So my enjoyment level was just way lower because I couldn't connect to so much. I think it had to do with the writing style for me. Everything people talk about, like, there is emotional impact in this story. We are having amazing conversations and discussions and reflections on society, and there's really well-written action. The world is cool and unique, but I just could not connect to this book. So, yeah. The Sword of Kaigen follows this little country named Kaigen, who is... The rest of the world has, like, technology and stuff, but on Kaigen, specifically in the Sword of Kaigen, which is, like, the most eastern, I think, peninsula. So essentially they are the closest to their enemy country. So if, like, the enemy were to come invade, the Sword of Kaigen is, like, the closest and essentially the first battle that will happen. Why they're called the Sword of Kaigen, because they're all in Kaigen. And in this little village place, there's no technology. It's, like, very shield and sword type vibes. Like, there's no cell phones and nothing. And we follow 2 characters. It's like a generational story. We follow the Matsuda family, and what happens is a new boy comes to town and starts to talk to the oldest child of this family. And as they're in school, the child starts to realize, the new child starts to tell him, yo, you're being told false information. Like, the propaganda is real. And we start to just see society begin to crumble as these cracks are formed. And then our main character, who is also the mother of this child, like the female, the mother of the Matsuda family, was went to school on a different continent, so she kind of knows that this whole village is filled with propaganda, but because she still believes in her culture and her family believes in this traditional society, she doesn't talk about it ever. And you just kind of start to see her also starting to get cracks in who she wants to be based on what society is telling her to be. It's a very interesting story. I loved the conversations on propaganda, on traditional societies, because we're in a world where women are married off to make the perfect bloodlines. Like, the magic system has a lot to do with your bloodlines, and they don't want any, like, crossing, so women are married off to have children and create, like, the best bloodline possible. They are expected not to, like, talk down to their husbands, not to argue with them. They're expected to do all the sewing, the cooking, the cleaning, care for the children. The children are expected to train so that they eventually will go to war, even though it's peacetime right here, right now. And you really start to hear, like, because she went to school outside of the country where women are allowed to be in the military, women are given freedom. Like, it's a tradition, it's a society we now know out there, but in this town it's so traditional. You kind of see her struggle with it. The times where she wants to say something to her husband, she wants to raise her children a little bit differently, she wants to talk about how she could fight just as good as them, and it's just such an intimate conversation, and an intimate conversation on motherhood specifically, because she's trying to do what's best for her children more than anything. And you get a strong female character, and a strong mother character, because very realistic to the fact, like, I told my mom I think she would really like this book and she should pick it up, because you're not watching a mother who's willing to sit at home while her children go out and die, which you get in a lot of fantasy. They're just like, oh, go save the world. No, my mother would be saving the world before me, because she would want to save it for me. And I really, really liked that honest interpretation of motherhood. But trigger warnings, there are lots of trigger warnings for things that happen in this book. This book is brutal in terms of war. It's not grimdark, but I would put it in a leaning towards dark fantasy. It does discuss some topics, and it doesn't shy away from the fact that war sucks. War really sucks. And there are some really heartbreaking moments in this, and as I read it, I said, like, this is the thing. I read this book and said, wow, that's heartbreaking. Wow, that's heartwarming. But just like that, like, I was just so monotone reading it because I personally couldn't connect. I will say the first 100 pages or so are exposition. We are getting a bunch of world building, a lot of word vomit about everything. And took me a really long time. Specifically, there's 2 pages of just, like, you're in a classroom and the teacher is just telling you the history of the world. It's just like 2 pages of history. It took me 3 days to read those 2 pages just because I could not wrap my head around everything that was happening. I just wasn't in the mood for a dense book at the time, and this is dense. I partially think that this could have been wrong timing for me. I am giving it a 3.5, but as I said, I'm not entirely sure why this isn't 5 stars, because I agree with all of the amazing reviews about it. I just didn't connect to it. I just didn't have those emotional punches when things happened, but I loved so much of it. The other thing I want to say is the plot is not really a driving factor. There is no point A to point B driving plot. I think the actual climax of the book happens about 50% in and then is over, and you have a whole chunk of the book still. The plot itself is more about how society takes these things and how society handles it. So what happens after war? What happens when the entire village is destroyed? Your families are killed. How do you keep going? How do you survive? And all of that. So it's not like a driving factor plot. It's just how everything works. So I gave it 3.5. I will still be suggesting this to a lot of people. I think if you're a character-driven reader, actually this will work way better for you, because I think that lack of a driving plot did also affect my enjoyment, because I'm not as character-driven and I didn't necessarily care wholeheartedly what happened to characters, versus I do enjoy when there's a plot pushing me on. I'm also not a standalone fan, because often I feel like they're pushing so much information at me at once, and by the time I actually like a character, the book just ends, because it takes me a really long time to warm up to characters, which is why I say I'm not a character-driven reader. But second books tend to be my favorite, seconds and thirds and fourths and fifths, because I'm already connected to characters, where the first book, pretty much the whole book, I'm struggling to connect. So part of the reason I hate standalones, well, I don't hate them, part of the reason I don't read standalones, I am a series lover for that reason, and if you like standalones, if you're you're character driven, if you want to if you're a mother, please read this. Like, I do think that there's some incredible representation and discussions in this, but look up trigger warnings, and if you want to know some triggers, you can also come to me. There is a very big trigger. I mean, there's war in this, and they don't shy away from it, but yeah. 3.5, a good read, not a great read. I was hoping for a 5-star. Let's put it on the board. I planned this out so I could get a bingo. So we're putting on poll pick because my patrons picked it for me to read, which you can barely see. And I did join sprints during this time, so that's a bingo there. I will not get another bingo, but we're going to put this as water on the cover. Indie Self Pub will be the last one. And so I got one bingo. I also did a guilt-free activity this weekend. I had a birthday party and didn't read it all really, but had a good time, drank, and I feel like that counts as guilt-free. I didn't really respond to a lot of messages other than who was at the birthday. Other than that, I want to say I did nothing. So that is what the last 10 days of June looked like for me. Let me know how you did for Whateverthon. I completed my goal. I think I read 9 books and my goal was 8 books. I had a busy month. I got COVID and I'm pretty proud of myself. I've been reading a crazy amount of books, but I'm actually very happy at where I'm sitting at right now in terms of quantity of books. My goal is 6 books a month, and I've been destroying that every single month. But I'm down to a part where I can just finally pick up some of the longer chunky books and some of the books I actually want to get to. And I think sitting at 9, which is about 3 every 10 days, really does work for me. And I'm very happy with where we're sitting at right now. So I'm happy with myself. I completed my Whateverthon goal, and I had a great reading month. I read a couple 5 stars, I read a couple 1 stars, but I don't mind even reading 1 star sometimes because at least it was an emotional toll on me, you know? Sometimes I like to hate a book. I mean, I don't want to hate books, but like, a hate read every once in a while is fine. And we got a couple of those this month. No matter what happened in Whateverthon, I just wanted to thank every single one of you for participating and for joining Team Beach Readers and joining whatever team you joined if you did not join my team. And yeah, I'm just so thankful for all of you. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me some sort of beach emoji because the end of the beach readers has come. And have yourselves, if you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.